All right. Is this working? Can you guys hear me okay? There we go. Well, I was debating earlier if I was going to say Happy New Year, if it's too late in the year to say Happy New Year, but I watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, and there was an episode where Larry David said something like, "You can't say Happy New Year after January 7th," and so I don't know if I was going to adhere to that kind of code of conduct in my professional dealings in public meetings. But anyway, so great to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have a couple things we can kind of run through here on the agenda. First thing I'll say is that the presentation portion of the meeting tonight is going to be recorded and will be up on the city's website later this week, so you'll all have access to that. And because we do have a couple new faces here, I do want to take a moment to do a quick round of introductions on the staff side, because as I mentioned at our last meeting, we had a new staffer join us in early December, and that's Daniel Cooperman. So, Dan, if you want to introduce yourself. And
I'm Daniel Cooperman. I'm happy to be here. Services Division Director for San Rafael.
Yep. And so Daniel's going to be our key staffer who's going to be responsible for work in this space around homelessness, but then also looking to the longer term vision of a community services department within the city. We're also evaluating other community needs in vulnerable populations. And so Daniel will also be spearheading those efforts during his time with the city. And I will add that he is joining us from about 10 years of working in the nonprofit space, as well as with other governmental agencies working in the homelessness space. He most notably was the homelessness czar at BART and led their strategic planning effort, and then has been consulting for cities, including the city of Santa Rosa, as of late, before we were able to bring him in-house. So just really excited and want to acknowledge Daniel for being here. And so he and Mel will comprise our community services division, and I am more than excited to have them on board. So those are the introductions. And then, of course, we have in the back Lynn Murphy, who is our mental health liaison, who I think some of you know, as well as Sergeant Rob Cleland, who was with us the last time. And then, of course, our facilitator, Lorenzo Jones. So he'll be helping out in the latter part of the meeting. So anyway, and then I know that we have a couple of folks who might be new to the group, or this is their first meeting with us, that they missed the last one. So if you're a first-time attendee to the working group, can you raise your hand? All right, so we've got 4 folks. We'll start with you. Just do a quick introduction, your name and what neighborhood you're from, or the organization you're with.
I live in and then MCOE, I'm the project supervisor over education for homeless children and youth here in both towns.
All right, great to meet you, Amy. And then back here, I saw we had 3 hands. So we'll go you, and then Bob in the back. Oh, and then we'll go to Joanne.
The first you. Jay, been here. 35 or 40. We're in there. And still part of Artworks downtown. And I have an architectural practice and serve on the business improvement district.
Great. Thank you, Jay.
I'm actually on the Living Experience Advisory Board. I'm the community outreach on the board. So
Great. Thank you, Alicia. Bob?
I'm Bob.
Access, which tries to get legal e-bikes up on cam and gets the illegal e-bikes off the streets and out of the schools. I live in Bristol.
Thank you, Bob. And then up front here, Joanne.
Joanne.
some properties down Roach. I own some property up on Santa Fe Hill. My neighbor's the city attorney.
I own the Goodwill building. Alex Ritter was my grandfather. And that building's been my family for 95 years. Goodwill's been my tenant for 38. And the Ritter House has nothing to do with nothing but naming their place off of a street sign named after my grandfather. And we have to do this, other than that.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you all so much. So again, just like the last meeting, we have 90 minutes. So tonight's agenda, we just wanted to touch base on just kind of reiterating what we're here to do as a working group. And then we're going to do a recap of the Blue Sky activity, what we did at our last meeting. So the team has gone through and has pulled some additional information they'll be able to present on that. And then we'll walk through kind of like the next steps for the working group, looking over, this was a 3-meeting commitment. And so what we're looking to do with our final meeting later this spring. And then we're going to break out into some small group discussions, which Lorenzo will be facilitating. And we have a bunch of handouts that we'll be able to give you with additional information as well. So, and then we'll do some large group report outs and talk about next steps. So just briefly here, this is something I wanted to touch on because I was lucky enough to get coffee with Roger Smith, and we had a whole conversation around, what is this group? Like, what are we here to do? And I wanted just to take a moment to kind of walk through what are the kind of main objectives of this working group, just so we all have that kind of clarity. And I just want to be upfront with you all on like what the city's looking to gain from this engagement as well. And the first part of it is to provide a space for the city and community members to come together and explore ongoing challenges and ideas around homelessness. And it's really an opportunity for us as staff to really meet people in person, not in our offices, not over email, where I think we can have, really good conversations about the challenges and the frustrations that you may be seeing in the city, and also share, what the city and our team have been working on. And so, I talked with Paula when she first came in, and she was telling me about things that she's seen on Nextdoor. And I think this is an opportunity for us as the city to at least level set with folks in the public to maybe dispel some of the things that might be going on out there in the community. Additionally, we want to use this as an opportunity to really build a foundation for a strategic plan for the city. From who we are as an organization, San Rafael approaches our work in a very human-centered design fashion. It's kind of one of the hallmarks of what makes San Rafael special when compared to other governmental agencies. I'm bragging, but it's what we call Together San Rafael, and it's what makes this a really great place to work. And our ability to build a strategic plan is rooted in our ability to hear from you directly. What are your pain points, and design an action plan based off of that. And then lastly, and this is, I need to get some water here. I'm talking too much. And lastly, we want each of you to be able to take what you learn here and share it with your fellow neighbors on what the city's doing with regards to homelessness. And that kind of gets to what I was sharing about the conversation that Paula and I had when we first started here. So that's just a quick overview of what the purpose of the working group is, but I'm happy to answer questions later on if you need anything clarified, or if you have any kind of questions on that. So at the last meeting, this group generated dozens of ideas and questions and concerns around homelessness in the city. And they focus specifically on 3 topic areas: camping on public property, shelter and housing, and services and programs. And so, as we said the last meeting, we would compile information and feedback and come back to this group in the spirit of sharing more information and arming you all with the information that we have on those topics. And so now Daniel and Mel have a number of slides that the two of them are going to walk through in terms of recapping the results of that Blue Sky activity. So I'm going to hand it off over to Daniel. You can take this.
Oh,
I mean, if you want to sit there, I can.
yeah, that's
I can manage.
All right. So obviously camping on public property is a big topic here. I know a lot of you probably communicated over email already. And so we're here to provide clarity on where camping is allowed. We added to our maps, the playgrounds and their 100-foot buffers. And then you'll see below when we talk about potential legal liability, obviously there's a lot of input about what we should be doing, what we are doing, and what the future looks like. And we'll go over sort of adhering to previous litigation, the Boyd case. And so that's a big part of your conversation today. And then we just wanted to show sort of calls for service. I know at the last meeting, this was presented. And so if you look at this time frame from July to September 2024 to October to January of right last week or 2 days ago, we saw over a 51% decrease, which is really spectacular if you look at it. And it frees up our police force to actually respond to the things that are imminent and causing danger within the city.
Yeah. So that's the October 4th was the opening of the sanctioned camping area.
Yeah.
Looks like. Oh.
Yep. And we can do a whole question and answer portion. There's only like, I think maybe 6 more slides on this, so.
And this is the same slide just for Anderson and Lindaro with that same time frame presented right there. So again, over a 35% decrease, matching up with opening the sanctioned camp.
I'll be behind the podium.
Okay.
I think I like that more. Hello again, Mel Burnett. So for the shelter and permanent housing development section, that was also one of the categories that you all looked at in the blue sky. And so on this one, we pulled out the sort of interest or question around focusing on a parallel development of shelter, interim housing, as well as permanent supportive housing. So that balance is certainly something that's a big priority for the city. So between developing permanent housing, such as recent sites like 3301 Kerner, which is scheduled to open very soon this year, hopefully within the month, the city provided 1.3 million towards that development from our affordable housing fund. And balancing with developing additional shelter and interim housing beds to kind of provide that emergency response. So being able to balance between those, as well as working in partnership meetings with the county to figure out how we can collaborate jointly to balance that. And then we also pulled out, so there was an interest in or question around, could we require builders to allocate affordable housing and build shelter or tiny homes? So it is actually a requirement in San Rafael that all new residential developments over 2 units do have to include either a percentage of those new units, typically around 10% towards affordable housing. Or if they're not going to do that, then they would be paying an in lieu fee. And that payment would go towards our affordable housing trust fund, which developers, nonprofits could then apply for to provide funding towards developments that are happening already. And we're actually going to be opening another round to receive applications for that really soon for this spring. Oh yeah, I'll stay here.
So a little more about community engagement and responses. One of the takeaways from last meeting was establishing a community-wide tiny home network. This is happening in multiple other jurisdictions right around us. So like 4 or 5 of our Bay Area counties are already doing this. A lot of the tiny homes that exist already in the world are funded predominantly by state funding. So HAP, there's been HAP round 1, 2, 3, probably will keep on going. And then they often involve the formation of homelessness subcommittees, groups like this, in terms of getting feedback from the community, in terms of location, progress, and success in the programs.
Daniel, the mayor has said that she hasn't been able to get ground to actually build housing. Where are these tiny units going to be built?
That is definitely still, we are looking for a place right now for a more permanent location after the sanctioned camp. Yeah. This me.
Mhm.
And then for mentorship, that was brought up last time, mentorship programs. So we at the city felt like there's a lot of nonprofits that currently provide mentorship programming. So instead of creating a whole new network of mentors, tapping into nonprofits like All Home that leads a really Bay Area wide mentorship program that's had pretty tremendous success. Like there are other resources that are out there. Some of these ideas that you guys came up with exist in other jurisdictions. It's just how do we access them here? This is me still?
Yes.
Oh, just kidding. And this sort of in the same vein with volunteer opportunities, we are gonna consider exploring implementing a volunteer program run by the city. But for our CBOs, our nonprofit partners, they love volunteers, either in-kind donations, time that you guys can provide. There's a multitude of ways you can volunteer. We have our community partners listed on our website here. And obviously, if you want like specific information, come talk to us so we can help coordinate that.
Right.
Sorry, I'll jump in. So I appreciate the graphic showing the decrease in calls for service for those two particular areas. And I'm just gonna preface this, I have two questions. So, number one, have you done any analysis of the change in volume of calls of service for areas surrounding the areas, such as Bristol Park or Albert Park or those are just two areas that I walk all the time that I know personally I've felt more about the costs since the changes that have been made. And then I guess instead of a question for my second, I just have a statement. I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to ask the community about potential solutions, but it seems a little bit like you just picked off some. And so some of these solutions that you picked out from our previous community engagement, like they may or may not be more popular or less popular with people. Some people may agree with them or not. So although these may have been originating with this group, I think it would be nice for everyone to be able to weigh in on things that they do or do not agree with, and maybe get some community feedback regarding this instead of saying, oh, came from the community, let's.
Oh,
Okay.
100%. And this is by no means meant to supplant any other future outreach that we do with the creation of a homelessness strategic plan. This is more or less giving us the information to build a foundation. So when we go out to bring on a contractor who's going to help us write the plan, we can say to them, we've done this kind of pre-work with the community. Mhm. Yeah.
Instead of just saying, oh, came from an engagement session. So I think that, my personal opinion is that I agree with some of those things, I disagree with some of those things, and it just doesn't feel like we really got feedback on those potential solutions. They just originated from this group, if that makes sense.
I hear you on that. And which color are you? Which dot? Okay. Well, I mean, we can take that feedback absolutely and incorporate that into what the approach is. And so, we can definitely look to do additional community engagement. Again, this is not meant to be written in stone by any means, but rather just a preliminary opportunity for us to connect with the community. I do not know if we have that readily available, but that's something that we can do and report back out to this group.
I also think if you do an analysis, it would be really important to include the SAFE team calls, because many times I've called the SAFE team because
Yeah.
sometimes it's a SAFE team call and not a call for service. So I do think that it is nice to say, oh, we have a lot less calls on the Home Creek path, but that's because nobody's on the Home Creek path now. So
That same thing, you also showed a 34% reduction in Anderson, but I think there's also a 34% reduction in the number of homeless people on Anderson. Because you put a bunch of rocks up and fine, I'm happy that the city did that, but you know, that's kind of leading us to a false conclusion that they can't, you know,
If they're going somewhere.
Yeah.
if they're going somewhere, they're doing something.
Well, I think, Roger, you raise a good point, and I think what we can look to do is, reach out to our crime analyst in the police department and kind of do some more analysis around this to expand the area outside of what we've already done, and then that's something we can push out to this group, so you guys have even more. That's something we can absolutely
And
do.
a number that
So-
would be very valuable is to know how many homeless people have been offered houses and have not accepted those houses. Or housing, let's put it that way, or shelter.
That's a conversation maybe we can talk about that later on in the meeting, because I want to make sure we at least get to some of the other questions that are here, because that's a longer, I'm just trying to manage our time for that.
I'm interested in.
Mhm. Yeah.
Service
Mhm.
being, because there is some data that would be really helpful to know, as well as for Anderson, of like those individuals that are, either waiting to get into the Mahon Creek path or
Yeah.
like waiting to get somewhere else, like
Yes.
how are they progressing?
Right, somebody successfully moved out, how many people moved out? We're spending a couple $1 million on this project. Just to know what results we're getting.
What we've gotten
I mean,
since
other than
October.
We don't.
Yeah.
It's also good.
I think a lot of that'll go into our bigger evaluation coming up in April, and we can definitely include a lot of the data analysis. So I think right now for Anderson, we chose that because a lot of folks are still there, and that's sort of a case study of the compliance with a lot of the ordinance aspects. And actually the data does include safe calls, so that's helpful to know that we can preface, so it includes anything from fire, paramedics, safe, PD, as well as like welfare checks. That are
Go to you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Jeff. This is more along the lines of short-term solutions. So I've been meeting with various faith-based organizations and yeah, so I've been meeting with various faith-based organizations, and something a repetitive trend that has come up in those conversations is this idea of this tenure group that used to exist, where the churches would host homeless people on any given evening during cold weather, and they would stay over. And so like the Jewish group that I met with today, they would get like 40 individuals housed on a Wednesday evening, and they loved hosting this. And some of the other churches that I've met with have given me similar feedback, and brought this up, and that ended, I guess, during COVID, and so some of them were inquiring about how they might be able to be part of the solution. So I just think involving the faith-based community and reaching out to them and helping, they all seem very interested in working with this issue.
No, totally. I appreciate you that raising that, because there was an article in the IJ 2 days ago around the severe weather emergency shelter program that's administered by the county, and it's not really being used. And I think it had replaced what you were talking about, is there was a much broader engagement with our faith-based partners in the community to support that program than what it's currently being used right now. But I think engagement with that community is definitely a critical part of any kind of solution that's coming from the city or the county.
John, I have one.
Mark, I want to just make sure we make space for others.
It's great that you got some data. We'd be interested in data, so we could disseminate that about specific successes on the Creek. And as someone who lives in Bret Harte and
goes up and down Anderson, walking or driving all the time, I certainly can anecdotally see that people are complying. Homeless are complying better. It seems calmer throughout the city. Both my sons who are 21, 23, they notice the difference, a positive difference. And we've gotten some good press in the IJ, and that's great, but we want to build on that. I agree with what you were saying with some facts.
Yeah.
Because I was a little distressed to see that the case managers weren't in place until fairly late in November. That I know is the key link, or one of the key links of supporting those individuals. Want to add one more thing is so, but there are two things. So anecdotally, it looks like it's working, but there's a new sort of problem, a new version of the same problem. There is no sidewalk on the side of the street where the sanctioned camping is happening. And so the street becomes a sidewalk and the other sidewalk becomes a sidewalk. So I don't feel comfortable walking down that sidewalk usually. And even sometimes during the day. And I'm just wondering how to really handle that spilling over, especially if my husband and I are Friday night coming back from Artworks downtown from the art walk, and it's 9:30, 10 p.m. and it's dark, and there's a spilling out of people and their stuff into the street, and I got hit by a car going the other way. And so it's a traffic problem, it's a safety problem, it's a boundaries issue.
Yeah.
And so I think that needs to be addressed. I'm not sure who to call that end homelessness San Rafael email seems too cumbersome. And then I want to specifically ask, there are two sites I keep wondering about. I keep forgetting to email you. Bring it up tonight, see what other people know. What is going on with the Office Depot site and with that old bank that is right near the new Ritter Center and across from Il Davide? I'm sure wouldn't agree, but those two sites seem to me like they'd be great for tiny homes or some transient temporary house. Anything happening there? Those two sites, the bank. Park Free.
Yeah, so there are, I think those sites have been acquired by developers for future redevelopment. And that's, I think, the extent of anything I can share on those two properties right now. But the question I have for you is, so when you're talking about, and this is just I want to make sure I'm clear with what I'm hearing you say. When, like, say you're walking back from artwork, are you talking about walking along Anderson and that's where you're seeing all that happen? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Creeks stuff, the tank. So buttoned up, I think it seems safe and controlled and see people coming. I also go down out of West Francisco too, of course. So both sides of it. It looks like it's being managed. People come to the gate and are waiting to be let in.
Okay.
And there doesn't seem like there's ever trouble coming from that section. And it's true enough. Someone said the other section of the Home Creek, there is no one there now. So I could walk there safely, but along Anderson's, there's a lack of boundaries that makes it really unsafe.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Molly. We'll go Jen and then Joanne.
You.
And then Katie.
I just want to keep about kind of my concern with you a little bit. You know, it's very appreciative of being, volunteering and having this opportunity. But I think what I'm unclear on really is, what decisions the city actually has already made. And so really what impact our ideas are having, where they're really going to go. And my worry is too, that this is just a check mark into something saying like, okay, we've checked this box. We've talked to the community, so now we can create this plan. So my confidence level just isn't there because I don't think there's some lack of transparency, I think, in decisions. And Mel, I emailed you these my specific questions around like what decisions have already been made. What is the stance really of the mayor, of the city council around the homelessness issue, which is very different than what I've at least read in the paper about what other leaders of other cities are willing to do. And so that's kind of really my open-ended question is like, we're here, but I don't really know what the impact I'm having is. And really, is it really just going to be a check the box? So my confidence level is a little.
Yeah.
I'd like to echo that.
I've got my hand up for like a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was thinking of the last meeting that we all had, and I feel like in a sense, we skipped a step where we all came here and immediately started talking about our solution ideas. And I think part of what didn't happen is that we all didn't share our own experiences about what the problem is. And how what we're seeing and how what we're experiencing is not working for us or our neighbors or our colleagues or students in schools and others. And I feel like I don't feel personally like I've had an opportunity in this group to share my personal experience of the homeless situation as it affects me as, you know, a citizen of San Rafael, as a parent, as, you know, as someone who uses a public park every day and lives across the street from one. So I feel like I've been able to share my concerns by email, and I tell neighbors to share their concerns by email. I know the fact that this group exists is recognition that the status quo is not okay and that we do have a problem that's not working for anyone in the city, you know, the way they want it to. And I feel like I need to understand better what the forum is to tell people to voice their concerns and where to go and what to do to tell, you know, leaders in the city that like, this is not okay. Like, it's not okay that there's a homeless person harassing children at a playground, or a homeless woman, you know, like literally stole Lawrence or tried to take Lauren's baby away from her. Like, the proximity of homeless people to, you know, places where children exist and the lack of mental health services and support. I mean, it's a huge problem, not just for homeless people, but for all of us. And I just feel like I haven't been able to say that here, and I haven't been able to say that on behalf of the, you know, dozens of people who talked to me about my participation in this group. And I find that hard, and I want to know, you know, for myself, sort of what other people in this room think and what other people's experiences are, because I really haven't heard that. I've heard people's ideas about, you know, mini houses, and, you know, some of the social services issues, but frankly, I personally and others in this room are probably not the best people, you know, to be opining about. But I guess I want to understand better what input from us, from our own experiences and as residents, you know, is happening here, and where that's gonna go, and also what to tell, you know, my neighbors, and on my, you know, outreach back to people. What should I be telling people to do? I mean, I tell people to email the city manager and the city council and, you know, End Homelessness Now with all of their thoughts and complaints. And I know you guys, you know, are constantly receiving that information, but I'm just really not sure like where to tell people to go with this, and frankly, where what I say is going with all of this.
I want to give Joanne some space to ask her question, and then I want to go back to what you were saying.
Jessica's Law, it's a national thing. And my understanding is, from good authority, that 10 to 17% of the homeless people are sex offenders that are registered. I was just recently, 2 weeks ago, at Walgreens pulling out on 3rd Street.
I can't hear you.
I was just at Walgreens recently pulling out onto 3rd Street. There was a guy, a wackadoodle guy, took his pants down, walked into the street. I called the police. I don't know if they were able to do anything about it. I don't want to see that. And I don't want my grandkids to see it. I live half a block from a park I go to all the time. And I had someone respond to me on next door saying, well, why don't we just have them move into your area? What's wrong with that? The bathroom's there and it's just pretty quiet. I have a question for you. I'm in Peacock Gap. I indicated earlier, I own the Goodwill building. It's a very important street to me. It was named after my grandfather. By the way, just for fun, that street, Ritter Street, used to years ago be called the Road to San Quentin, which I think is kind of funny. But Ritter Street, Ritter Avenue on one side, that's a really important street to me, and I have commercial property there. I have a business there. Goodwill's going to be up for lease renewal. I have apartments across town in Gersel Park. I have quite a few Section 8 tenants who are very, very put together. They're there. They've been there for up to 20 years. I had a homeless person's come onto my property. I have video cameras there. At 1:30 in the morning, I called the police. Gosh, I got some homeless people bothering an 83-year-old tenant. I don't love that. That's not good for my business. That frightens my tenants. I have a commercial, I have a home rented up on Curtis, right by Boyd. I looked it up. It seems to me Boyd Park, the reason that was one of the two, that and Albert, but Boyd Park was restricted from, doesn't have homes. The 19 other parks get homeless people allow. But Boyd Park was taken off of that because of why? There was a fire. I lived on Curtis Avenue a lot of my lifetime. And in that very house, up to 4 years ago, when I got married and moved to Peacock Gap, and in that house, I had people on the hillside behind Curtis using methamphetamines and starting fires. I had a crazy woman enter that house when my mother was alive. I went into, I heard something happening in the middle of the night. I got up and I opened the door and there was a homeless person in there. She just walked in the house. My elderly mother was sick for a while and she apparently left the door unlocked. Someone walked in the house. I don't love this feeling. This is not the way I grew up in San Rafael. I was born and raised here. And it's a really important town to me. But my husband and I even look at it and say, what do we do? Do we move? What do we do? I walk through our park 5 times a week. I exercise like every other 70-year-old woman in my area. Should. And I can't say I'm gonna wanna do that if I got some guy out there that is a sex offender, not that they're gonna run after me, but good God, I don't wanna have any interaction with them at all. In any way, shape or form in my beautiful home that I keep manicured with gardens and do my thing, you know. I don't know. I don't mean to be so passionate. Last question, just really fast. I'll ask one question. My first meeting, just pretend I was here last time. Here's what I would ask. What kind of analysis was done when they put forth that, Santa Fe will be the only place that homeless people can be when that Fairfax went away a month ago and so they can borrow? What kind of analysis was done to see how it would affect the value of our homes, my commercial building, apartments in Santa Fe, to have homeless people around? It makes it really difficult to rent places, to live in places. What are they gonna do? Are they gonna go Peacock Gap? They're gonna go through our garbage cans on Wednesday? What do
Are
you think
there
about that?
individuals experiencing homelessness going through your garbage cans in Peacock?
Yeah. Well, $5, right? Put them out in Peacock, you're gonna have that. Where are they gonna go? They can't go to Andy's Market. It's too far to go. It's a 2-mile walk.
There have been people homeless who have tried to settle on the berm.
That's right.
And the city actually didn't move them, right? The HOA stepped in and helped, right? But the city refused to actually do that. Okay, so what happened? And I'm hearing a whole lot about the homeless people. What I am not hearing is any analysis whatsoever in any of the things that we're talking about here about what this impact is on actual residents in the entire San Rafael. Nothing. Zero. Okay, 66,000 people. Okay, and we're talking about 326 homeless people here. All right, what is being done to actually understand the impact on the 66,000 other people? You don't want to hear questions, all right? But that is and I've been talking about this for months, okay, since April.
So here's what I'm going to suggest we do, because I'm hearing, I think, really just clear and valid feedback. And I want to make sure that we create a space where we're able to receive this feedback from all of you. And so what I'd ask is, could you give us like 5 minutes for just a quick huddle, and then I can connect with Lorenzo and we can look at how we can reprogram the remaining portion of our time, so you all have the space to provide what you're feeling and experiencing with the city. And then we can use that to kind of incorporate, incorporate into any kind of future planning and meeting.
Yeah, make a suggestion. I think we don't want this to devolve into a gripe session about people's specific experiences with the homeless.
Agreed.
We've all had, or I think most people in this room have had those experiences, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're interested.
Yeah.
We're all interested in improving our community. So I don't think that, I think with the I think, and it's great, we want to be the city's ambassadors and provide information to our neighbors. But I think we need to understand, there's been lots of ideas. We don't want to provide, I don't speak for myself at least, I don't think we want to provide you with ideas. We'd like to hear what ideas you have and what ideas other communities are looking into or trying or experimenting with. And which ones are practical, because some are unaffordable, and why they're unaffordable. So we know that, gee, the city would love to build. I mean, this question, everybody breezes past, oh, we're going to build tiny homes, that's our goal. But everybody breezes past the extreme difficulty in finding a piece of land where it's feasible. So, that you should say that and, be a little more upfront about some of these challenges.
And I.
And then we can be.
Well, hold on here. Can we just? Well, I've been with this city for a year and a half, so, but. Yeah. So. I want to just, because there's a lot going on here. And if it devolves, then it's gonna waste everyone's time. So let's take like a 5-minute break and then I'm gonna loop up with Lorenzo and we're gonna kind of figure out, chart ourselves a path where we can have a productive conversation on this. So we're not just venting. Which look, I love the Real Housewives. I love a good vent session. So I'm okay with it. I can take it. So anyways.
Great.
Why don't we talk about what is planned for the back half so that they know what's on the agenda before we completely scrap it. So I think we should inform and tell everyone exactly what the future plan is so that we can inform, you can be included, and then we can bring you in to make the decision. So do we have the slides where we can?
So what we were planning to do this evening was to have you break out into small groups and kind of have these conversations around the challenges and issues that you have with the camping ordinance, the community engagement that we're doing, as well as the services and housing and shelter that's going on in the city. And then we'd use that to then incorporate, frame up some potential way of us having a conversation about how do we incorporate that into a strategic plan and move forward and build on that with the consultant team later this year. So
Can you go back to the previous slide? Because I think it would be helpful. What I'm hearing is that you want to know what the journey is, right? Where are we going on this journey with this particular working group, right? And what's the starting point? And so what I'm hearing a lot is it would be helpful if we had data, right? To better inform us so that we're not regurgitating, we're not going down the path that's not taking us to where we need to go. So one of the things I think will be helpful that I'm listening to is, all right, so we need to get you the data of what's working, what's not working, and what is potentially in the pipeline. And I think some of that might be in the back. So that might be helpful. But I think also bringing in conversations on, I like to use this conversation on start, stop, and continue. So it might be a conversation we might have later today or future. What do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? What do we need to continue to do? So I'm hearing also what's working. So you get that from the data, right? So if you saw the data on the phone calls going down, one of the questions I think I would want to know is, well, why? How did that happen? What's working so that we could replicate that in other areas? Or what's not working. So all of that information, I think should be shared, and we need it from you. So I think somehow on this journey, I see the roadmap here, but how do we incorporate that so that you're fully armed with this information so that, yes, we can set aside some of the data that we already know, and then come back and say, what do we need to do? What's included? What else can we do that's not on the plan, or what potentially is working that we want to continue to expand, right? So that's how we shape sometimes a business plan, and we look at those things. So I think, when we get to that stage, that would be helpful, whether we get to that today, but I think maybe by the third meeting, or we send it out prior to, we arm you with as much information. One of the other things I just heard is creation of some type of 1-pager or 2-pager fact sheet, right? So a 1-pager, so if you're sharing, if we're asking you to be ambassadors and share out information, you don't want to go through a 20-page deck, right? You want the facts of, here is what's working, here's what's not working, here's some information that I think would be important to you, here are the contact information, and that's in itself helpful. So I think we can
We need to ask the questions, okay, not just be told by the San Rafael City Council, here's some nice pictures, all right, okay? We need to ask the questions and set those metrics, right? And at that point, when we can believe in what we've been told, we get on the same page.
So I think that would be.
Maybe one of the groups could focus on coming up with ideas on how to collect public sentiment about this issue and its impact on quality of life for like, you know, regular everyday people in San Rafael. Like, I don't think you guys want to hear.
Everyday people too.
Yeah, I know, I'm not saying that they're not, but like,
The narrative was getting old.
okay, well, maybe I should.
We have an engagement bucket, which is literally
Yes.
designed for your answers, thoughts about how we can better engage the whole community.
Like, I don't think you guys want people showing up at the city council hearing on, you know, whatever the new homeless ordinance is gonna be, like vetting their feelings about this. Like, I feel like finding a better way before then for people to voice their concerns and experiences about how homelessness and like the population and lack of services has impacted other people's lives. Like, I just
Yeah.
feel like capturing that information in a constructive way, as opposed to like inviting people to come, you know, like complain or whatever at a city council hearing or, you know, even an email. Like, I just think we need to channel that in a better way. And that would be a very productive use of this group because we all engage, you know, with citizens of the
Yeah.
community or non-citizens, I mean, people in the community.
I'm
so.
missed it big time right now. I put an article that I had received about how to solve this on nextdoor.com 3 times in the last month and a half. Just this week, I did it again. I didn't say where this article came from. And I had someone that wrote me and said, hey, let's put them in the parks. They can use our bathrooms and be quiet. I wrote and I said, what do you think of this idea? Don't you think that's a better idea than having them come into our park? And he wrote back, and I have it right here. He said, that's a great idea. Why isn't it being done? And I hate to stick my neck out right here. I'm right in the middle of Marin County. Should I do it?
Sure.
It came from our current incoming administration and it's a great plan. Sorry, it's a great plan. And it's really simple and concise on one page here. And the bottom line, it's directed. We're 30% of the homelessness in the United States is right here in California. We're a great part of it. And they need to be in some place that they're living on the squalor and the messes on our streets. You might recognize me as a piano player at Joe's. They right by Joe's. When I'm playing the piano, they're there. And we don't need them there. They need to go out to the south. They need to go away to the suburbs and use the money to find a facility to give them the treatment they need.
Yeah.
Get a mental institution or something.
So I want to just, I just want to just time out.
5 minutes.
Yeah, we're gonna take the 5 minutes.